This bill, Alpha Alpha 4 Quebec, it is 7 o'clock. I'm going to hit the gavel. Bang. We are welcome everybody to the December meeting of CADXA. Actually, the first of two meetings we're going to hold this December. Because we have an out-of-town presenter, our usual habit is to immediately go right into the presentation after everybody introduces themselves. Again, I'm Bill, Alpha Alpha 4 Quebec, and let me pass the microphone around the room, and then we'll go around the Zoom meeting, and everybody can introduce themselves real quick, and we'll hold our presentation. So here you go.
Gary, KC7CS.
Mike, N7MW, finally got DXCC honor roll on CW. It only took 47 years.
John, N7NWL.
Bob, K7 VHM.
Jim, K7MY.
OCNG7E.
I'm Virgil, K7VZ.
Okay, and turning it back over to the Zoom meeting, go ahead and introduce yourselves real quick.
Richard, N7NT Mesa.
Bob.
Eric.
Go ahead, Eric.
Thanks. Thank you, Bob. Eric, KC7 Echo Sierra, Scottsdale.
This is Bob, NA7RH, Scottsdale.
Paul, N3PS in Sun City.
Steve, K7SP, and Virgil, if you could turn the mic gain up just a little.
Mike, KC7V, I'm up in the greater Carefree, Cape Creek, New River area.
Doug
Tom
said in Sun City West.
Tom and Q7R.
I'm Jim in 7US. Just finally got my audio working. I'm in Illinois.
Too much greenery there for Arizona.
I'm Dan, November 7 Hotel Quebec in Austin, Texas.
Israel, K7NO, Phoenix.
KC1BB down in the desert south of
Walt, NJ8G, Glendale.
Steve, AA3AE, normally in Phoenix, but back in Threeland for the weekend.
$14 on Zoom and 8 in the room. Is 22 people in the meeting. Thanks a lot. Okay, it was November 7 Hotel Quebec, if I remember correctly, is our presenter. We had another presenter that was going to talk about remote using the Flex radios, but he couldn't make it, so N7HQ volunteered to fill in for him. And Dan, I didn't have any bio about you at all, so I'll let you give some more introduction about yourself. And,
Okay.
Go ahead and start up your presentation. You'll probably have to share your presentation, and I'll turn off the microphone and sit down and listen.
Now. All right. Can everybody see that?
Yes, we're good.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we can.
All right. Well, we still will be having a remote HF operations talk, although Mike Walker, who's my comrade in arms here at Flex Radio, is definitely the expert on all things HF remote. I'm, my title is Director of Amateur Radio at Flex Radio Systems, and basically I sit between engineering and marketing for 90% of my job, and I also manage the support team here at Flex Radio. So So I work on a lot of commercial products. So I'm kind of known as the amplifier guy here. A lot of the code in the PGXL is mine. So that's actually how I found myself working at Flex Radio. I was hired by 403A Ranco to sort of rewrite the firmware in the PGXL when it first started making its way to market, and then Flex has picked me up and put me in the position to do more of that. So I'm a fairly technical individual. I'm not technically part of the engineering team, although I do engineering work from time to time, and I'm currently working on a project that I can't talk an awful lot about, but it's an amplifier project that is a high-powered HF amplifier for a commercial customer. I am also quite familiar with remote HF operations. I have responsibilities that include managing our SmartLink service and helping customers perform during supporting in remote HF operations. So I'm quite familiar with the subject, especially within a Flex Radio lens. I'm less familiar with things outside of Flex. So I'm going to skim over some of those. Mike Walker is the real expert there, and he's left a number of really good resources and links that you can follow up with. And then I'm sure Mike will be happy to answer any questions that I may not be able to answer with respect to other remote HF radio solutions. I'm going to try to keep this not a Flex Radio commercial. I'll be talking about remote operations in general. If you have a question, I'd appreciate that if you just kind of like write it down and remember it to later. I'd like to get through the question or get through the presentation before I open it up for questions. But if it's just such a burning question that you absolutely have to ask it and interrupt the presentation, I'm fine with that too. So with that, I'm just going to get started. What the picture I chose for the beginning of this is a Bouvet Island as a kind of a hat tip to that expedition that's coming up next year. Unfortunately, unfortunately the last one didn't work out so well for everybody, and I sure hope they're able to get something online. But that is I think one of the first expeditions to Bouvet Island, and they didn't. If they had radio, there isn't one present there, so it'll be interesting to see pictures that have antennas on it. So I guess the first thing, any presentation about any topic, is that you have to ask the question, what you're talking about, and what is remote HF operating? For the last 100 years, ham shacks were really the nerve center of operating, right? So all the feed lines led to the ham shack. It was usually a single dedicated operating position, although contest stations have recently, within recent times, been developed that have multiple operating locations, and they've developed the technology to support that. But for the average ham, most ham shacks are the sort of single operating position that has a feed line to it. Now, since the internet has provided an opportunity for a lot of other technologies to advance, the internet has also provided a great opportunity for ham radio. and in specifically the ability to remote a station. And the internet is pretty much in every home, especially in the U.S. and worldwide. And it is the technology that is enabling the ability to really truly remote a station. It has replaced almost entirely the old standby RS-232 or serial for controlling hardware and sharing frequency and band and mode information, although there's still a lot of holdouts out there like CI5 and CAT for local control. But Ethernet has really simplified the ability to install and communicate with the station. My own station, you'll see in the slide that's coming up, is 100% Ethernet controlled. I don't have a serial port anywhere, and that is quite a change from earlier incarnations of my ham shack. So why would you want a remote station? Well, one is that you live in a location where you have a high noise level and you can't hear. So moving your station and your antenna to a remote location that is less burdened by noise would be one reason to do this. That you're in a location where you can't raise an antenna, like you have an HOA or some other constraint that doesn't allow you to add an antenna or the type of antennas that you'd like if you want to compete, for example, in a contest. That a lot of us have recently faced this, myself included, is that moving from a house or downsizing to a smaller house. I mean, I was lucky that I was able to downsize into a property where I can put up antennas, but a lot of my friends and acquaintances just don't have that. They've moved into, say, Sun City, which is just south of us here. And I understand a lot of you are in the Arizona version of Sun City, where putting up an antenna like a tower would be verboten, and you'd have to, work with the management there to, put up a station, a club station or something like that. The HOA, as I said, if you have a buddy, for example, who's a shut-in and you want to be able to share your station with that individual, there would be another reason to have a remote. Or your friends just can't build a station, and the same kind of thing, only they're not necessarily shut-ins, but they're in an apartment, or they can't build it for a number of reasons. That your new QTH is an apartment, or I think one of my favorites is your hobby needs a hobby. So if you want to learn something new, remote is a really great way to do that, because there's an awful lot, and can be an awful lot, involved in doing remote radio good. And then there's a lot of different other ideas, and I'd love to hear from you guys if you have other ideas or something, and we can talk about them at the end of the presentation. So what types of remotes are there? And again, we're focusing on HF remote, not VHF or repeater-like stations. This is HF. It's defined by at least 160 meters up through 6 meters. One is that that you may want to operate from the comfort of your office, but you don't want to have all of the wires and cables and everything necessary to run the station. You want to put those in a garage someplace. So remote can be even within the same house. And make it easy and simple to operate. So you can operate with a minimum of desk clutter or complexity for your operating station. That your antenna systems is far away from from your ham shack. So I know a lot of people that have acreage, for example, and they want to put their amplifiers and exciters and antenna tuners as close as possible to the antenna. But I mean, they can be thousands of feet away from the house. So you can have an HF remote station that is still on your property, but is remote, at least from the operating position. Another one is you want to operate from a different location, but close. And I don't know what Mike is meaning here. It's a different location. It could be, I guess, like your neighbor's place, or you have a buddy that has acreage that's local, like in your local, in your in the same county or city that you're in, and you want to operate, you can put up an antenna there, but it's still a close in, maybe quieter than where you are, that you want to share with your friends. I think Mike put this in here. I didn't put this in. We're all getting older. Sharing is good. Leaving the tower climbing and all the things that happen to make a good ham radio station is really kind of a younger man's thing for at least some of us. So, having the ability to remote into something like that is really good. The other is that if you want to be remote, but it isn't really close, a great example of that is the 403A station in Montenegro. I have a Montenegrin call, 407HQ, and I can operate that station remotely. And quite honestly, I use the same set of operational procedures that I do locally as I would in the Montenegro station that's sitting on top of an island in the Bay of Kotor in Montenegro. And I can make use of the awesome antenna farm that Renko has there, as if it is my own. And if you're a serious DXer or a contester, that's a really good thing. That gives you access to stations that may be beyond your wallet, like the 403A station is beyond mine. Or that if you're in a club and you want to set up a station for many people to use, there's another type of remote situation that we've seen. But everybody is different, and just like other aspects of ham radio, you have, you can either take a small bite of the apple or a really big one, and everybody has a different solution or an idea, and we want to go through some of those right now. So Mike's station, this is his current station. It's a Flex 6000. He's got web switches by KM-Tronic. This allows him to control power on and off different devices. He uses a Raspberry Pi for an automatic modem reboot. He's really gone all out. He has an IQ router that's been replaced recently with a PF Sense, which is a high-end router. He's also got a remote PC at the radio end on the local LAN that allows him to remote desktop into the network there, and we'll talk a little bit of why that's important. He started with one multi-band antenna, and then he expanded to 3-element stepper. He has a wired single band antennas, and also has an Elecraft KPA 500 that he uses. And he is really, every year that I've known Mike, he's improved his station incrementally. He's replaced portions of it, but he's learned an awful lot. One of the things that we like to say to one another is that when you're planning for remote operations, you need to know that Murphy was an optimist. So what can go wrong will go wrong is an optimistic statement when it comes to remote HF. So this is my station. And I had a set of simple tenets that I use to sort of manage it. This is the basic dream station from Flex Radio, Flex 6600, PGXL, TGXL, Antenna Genius. And I've been experimenting. I'm an antenna experimenter. So I like to be able to change antennas and try different things out. The Antenna Genius makes that really easy to do. For those of you that may have an Antenna Genius, you'll notice its UI I pasted into this slide. That's my current antenna farm. I started off with a tri-band and a bunch of dipoles, inverted Bs. And then I've been kind of mixing and matching over the past couple of years. And I always include a dummy load that it has at least the capability of syncing the highest power I can generate in the station for a significant period of time. So I have a Bird 3 kilowatt dummy load that I use. That has helped. That's been a really great investment. It has allowed me to troubleshoot problems that off air that normally would require to be on air to do it. But the tenets that I have really keep it simple and fun. Conquer RFI and grounding. Now, the Bible for grounding is from W0AX. I highly recommend reading that book. I have some other resources if people are interested in that, but that's the number one issue that people, or that ham radios that come into us, our support line, almost 80% of the issues that come in can be traced back to some sort of RFI or grounding issue. So really understanding that and putting the effort, the engineering behind the solution that you have to conquer it. I like to say leverage the features, not the wallet. Well, one of the reasons that I really like Flex Radio products is it gives me more bang for the buck than other radios have. Although I have, a number of non-flex radios. I've got a TSB 2000 from Kenwood. I've got an old Heathkit SB 104, the complete line. If you look on my QRZ page, you'll see that. And I've had the KP4 in my shack. I don't own one, but I've had one. I had one to play with for a little while. So I'm not at all adverse to using different products. I have a Henry 3K Ultra as an amplifier, a tube amplifier that I fire up every once in a while. But I've also decided that I should color in the lines. So I'm not as Mike is like far more adventurous than I am in trying out new components and features. I quite frankly don't have the wallet to support that. So staying within the boundaries that of the products that I have is generally a good thing. I also am a firm believer in documenting your station and doing as thorough a job as possible. I use draw.io. That's a free diagram tool, and if you see the diagram on the right side of the slide, that is generated by draw.io. I also am a firm believer in making it maintainable and not hiding things. So if I need to replace a failed component or cable, that it's easy to do so, and I don't have to bend over to do it. And it's also supporting of my HF antenna experiments. So I set those tenets up as a way to help guide my decisions when making purchases and changes to my station. I strongly recommend, maintaining your own set or devising your own set. It really helps avoid negative experiences with products as well. Let's go over some of the radios that are available for remote HF. Flex Radio has one. It's all built in, uses something we call SmartLink. It's just off the shelf ready for you. You don't need to pay any extra. All you need to do is just set up an account on our SmartLink server, and it's available to any radio that we currently sell. Elecraft has a lot of people have been using a remote rig with Elecraft. I think the K4 has some remote solutions that are built in, although I have not had hands-on with that. That's why I can't comment on it. But I've heard that they're making good progress with that, which is great. ICOM with their IRSB A1 software, that'll work for some of the more recent ICOM rigs. I think there is a limit to the CI5 version that it supports. I don't have the details on that, but it's not for every radio. Yaesu has the SCU LAN 10 solution. Again, I don't have any direct experience with this. There may be someone in the club that does that can comment on it later. Remote rig is probably has the biggest footprint in the market, and it works with most radios. I've had a lot of customers comment that it works very well for them, and they recommend it. The MFJ 1234C, the rig Pi remote station server that they have. Again, I don't have direct experience with this, but it looks pretty good. Remote hams RC4B. That has, again, these are just kind of a list to me. And there's probably some that I've missed, that we've missed here. So there's a lot of remote solutions that are out there on the market. Some of them are free. Some of them come with a fee. The one I'm most experienced with is SmartLink, which is free if you own a Flex radio. The user interface then becomes the factor in the decision. So when you're remote, you need to be able to remotely interface with the hardware. So you can't rely on the knobs that are on the front of the radio, for example. So Flex Radio has solved that by producing a product called the Maestro, and also Smart SDR on a PC, and you can just have a microphone connected to it, just like this Zoom session, and it works. Remote ham radio and others have web browser interfaces. I'm a big fan of remote ham radio, and I've used their stations. They have a really slick web UI that has an FT8 the solution built right in. So it's easy to operate that mode, as well as CW and single sideband. ICOM has some PC software. Again, I'm not familiar with that. The D8 DL8 MRE is one of our third-party software provider, Marcus from Germany. He has iOS and Mac software that work with both ICOM and Flex radios. His software is top notch. If you own a Mac or you want to use it on your iPhone or tablet, iPad, that software comes for a fee, but it is really quite good. And he is always adding new features to it. There are also Android solutions out there, Linux-based interfaces that are available. There's remote desktop for Skype. They're using Skype for audio. So there's a lot of UI that is being developed and used by the people. The ones I would recommend are, of course, are the Flex Radio and the iOS and Mac software by DL8 MRE. One thing to consider when you're doing a remote station is the network that is at the remote end. So that is, most of us live in communities and households that have either fiber or some sort of high bandwidth internet available to you. And remote stations can be at the other end of that spectrum. So the more remote you are, the more difficult it is to get the type of internet connection that you need to have a successful remote. One of the most important measurements that you can make on a remote station, if you're putting one up, is the one for jitter. Jitter is the variation in the time delay between when a signal is transmitted and when it's received over a network connection. The lower number is better. So, for example, it's not ping, although you could use ping or ICMP to measure jitter, but it's the variation between ping times is a great example. So if you were to do a ping between yourself and some remote station, and you had between a 15 and a 20 millisecond response time, then your jitter would be somewhere around 5 milliseconds. So that plays the biggest role in any real-time communication that you have. Even if you compress your audio or you do things to reduce the bandwidth requirement, jitter is at the core of your experience with that remote station. So if you do sign on to, say, a remote station, make sure that you measure jitter, and it can change between endpoints. So jitter for you may be a different value than, say, someone who lives in a different location. It all has to do with the time between the stations. Now, there's a really great tool that will measure that, and then the URL is here, and there's also a QR code that you can scan if you want to go use that tool. So I have absolutely no familiarity with this PST rotator this is for satellite remote, but Mike swears by it. It runs on a PC that's local to the radio, and it has a lot of different capabilities for doing remote satellite work. If you want to put up a remote satellite station, my recommendation is to send a note to Mike, because he's done it and is doing it, and has always, and he shares internally at Flex Radio some of his conquests on that, which are pretty cool. So in my bucket list, I've got a satellite station that I want to put up. And so I'm going to be looking into this kind of a solution in the next year or so. Another important thing for remote stations is to be able to turn things on and off. And by turn things on and off, I mean being able to switch the AC power off to something so you can power cycle it. There are a number of solutions on the market to do that. I've used the KM-Tronic products before. I also have used like a Lutron, AC outside outlet for this as well. So there are a lot of home automation type appliances that are available. The one thing I like about the KM-Tronics is that it also have some contact closures that that you can use to trigger other things in the shack that may not be AC related. Great example of that would be, say, turning off DC or disabling an antenna. And you can go to Amazon and get almost all of these. They have the ability to log them. Microbit also makes some. Camtronics, as I mentioned before. There's a ton of solutions out there. Just make sure you're not buying like the super cheap stuff, because you want to have the ability. You want to make sure that that the solution has the ability to report status. There's a lot of junk out there that's kind of a fire and forget thing that, if you guys remember X10, which I used to call X9 out of 10 because it didn't work very well. But you can, make sure you spend a little, if you're going to spend money, spend a little here on the on-off power cycle 8-bit products. So lightning and being able to disconnect remotely remote antennas. I mean, this is really a risk that it cannot be removed. One of the nice things about the Antenna Genius is that when it's not being used, it grounds all the antennas. But there's a difference between disconnecting an antenna and grounding it, especially when there's lightning that's around. There are some sort of homebrew solutions that I've seen, and I'm pretty sure 403A is working up a product that will do a knife switch like disconnect for antenna systems. And this is I think with the number of stations that are popping up here, this will be something that you'll be able to see products come out here in the next year or so. So I mentioned that there's a PC that is at the remote end of the station. I think that is an absolute requirement. So Mike's experience is that he didn't have one to begin with, but it became really important later that you could use remote desktop to it. You can get on the local network. You can run PCs remotely. There's a lot of different solutions, like TeamViewer is one. Remote desktop, you can do RDP, VNC, AnyDesk. There's a number of solutions. But it's far easier to control programs on a PC that is local to the radio for things like Stepper and the KPI 5000 than try to jump through the hoops necessary to control them remotely. The other reason that you can have it, you can get really great digital performance. FT8 and RTTY, as that you don't need to worry about RX and TX audio being corrupted by the LAN. I don't have problems with FT8 on SmartLink because that's factored into the architecture for it, but other systems may have issues with sending RX and TX audio over the LAN. You can also operate from anywhere. If you have a PC there, you don't necessarily need to have a PC where that's a capable PC where you are. You can use a really lightweight PC or a tablet, for example. You can also, it's easy to lend it to a friend since everything is set up and going. So if you have a friend that you want to have operate like it should shut in, you want to give him the ability to operate, you can just give him the credentials to the PC. There's only one computer to maintain. You don't have to maintain them multiple computers. And it's a really great platform for any type of local debugging. Okay, antenna control. So if you have one or two antennas, it's not a big deal. But as soon as you start adding more, then you need some sort of remote antenna switches. So Microbit makes some nice ones. 403A makes has several products that are out there. The 2x8 Antenna Genius is probably the best known. It's one I use here. It gives you the ability to operate in true SO2R mode using just a single switch, which is pretty cool. Remote Rig has capabilities for handling in remote switching. PST Rotator has integration. The radio itself can be connected so that it sends band data to the switches. That's effectively how the Antenna Genius works, only it's using the internet, not the internet, but the local area network and not serial. And there's a ton of DIY stuff that's out there. So what can go wrong? So the number one issue is power failure. So you got to make sure that you can recover from a power failure. That means all devices need to be able to reboot and become operational from power failures. There's some gotchas there, like if if your PGXL, for example, the power goes off and comes back on, the power can come back on, but if your router has not completed booting, the PGXL may not get an IP address if you're using DHCP, for example. So you need to think through scenarios like that. I'm a firm believer in using DHCP supplied static IP addresses, meaning you reserve them, but then you need to have the ability to delay the power up or reboot devices that may be dependent on the router. Now you can use US uninterruptible power supplies. I have one in my station, and that really kind of takes the edge off of glitches that come across. But if you have a true outage that lasts for longer than the battery of your UPS, then you need to be able to support a full reboot. And if you do have a UPS, make sure it isn't noisy. Buy and test or ask your friends if they have one, and return it if it is noisy. And the other thing to do is that you can have a full-blown test for a power outage. It's pretty easy to go to your main circuit breaker and just turn everything off. And make sure if you do that you test for a long one. So getting started, well, define your goals. And as I mentioned, if you have a set of tenants that you can use to help you vet any decisions that you make, do one thing at a time. Don't go out and about the only change to that would be, like, if you buy everything Flex Radio, if you buy the Dream Station, then it's already been integrated, done all the engineering for you. But if you're going to be doing a piecemeal approach, or you want to do remote other products, which is fine, just make sure you do one thing at a time. And even with the Flex product, it's really good to make sure you integrate one piece of equipment at a time and test as you do it, right? So don't just set everything up and then drive away. So if you really are remote, if you're setting up a distant remote station, plan to be there a couple of days to make sure that once you build it, you get up on the air, that you're not going to have to drive back immediately or fly back in some cases. Keep lots of notes, document everything. Sketch wiring at a minimum, use draw.io. record your IP addresses, your passwords. Everything needs to be documented. I use a password vault called RoboForm. There's LastPass is another one, but one of RoboForm's features that I really like is it has secure notes, so I can fill out a whole text page worth of notes and store it securely, so I don't have to worry about passwords being sent over the internet in the open. If you're buying a new radio to do this, look for radios that have well thought out abilities to connect remotely. Flex Radio was designed from the ground up to be a remote ration that it requires very little network experience. You don't need a VPN. You don't need static IP addresses. For ICOM and Remote Rig and others, it does require some level of network experience. You may need to put a VPN together, although there's lots of them out there. Getting one connected for the first time requires some basic IT skills. You also need to be able to track any changing IP addresses. So unless you have a static IP address on the internet at the remote station, you're going to need to have the ability to roll with the punches if the ISP changes the IP address. It's all doable. A lot of people have done it. There's a lot of support, Reddit and remote forums, a lot of good advice from companies. So if you want to get started, here's a QR code for a getting started document from courtesy of Flex Radio. That's a dynamic document that Mike keeps updated. Another thing to consider, and I don't want to spend too much time on this, but Node-RED is a very popular tool to do station automation in custom ways. It's really a wonderful tool. It lets you program your station without actually having to write code. It uses a visual programming methodology. It's really easy to learn, and there's a ton of support for it out there. Runs on a Raspberry Pi or a PC. It's really quite a good tool. So here's some remote resource for remote collaboration. You'll be able to click on these directly from the PDF download for this. And then I want to address CW for one thing, because for the CW purist or someone that is a contester and where CW performance is really important to them, then some remote solutions may not work. Most remote solutions have a keyboard CW sending function. You can also pair two WinKeyers that allows you to hand send CW, but that particular solution runs one character behind. All the ASCII letters are sent over the internet. Flex Radio is the Maestro sends element links to the radio. It's not ASCII letters, so it's not as limited as WK Remote. It's pretty good, but I mean, there still is, any delay between you and the remote radio, if it's 100 milliseconds or a quarter of a second, you can't get any better than that. So if it's really remote, or you are really remote, or you have a slow internet connection, it could impede your remote CW experience. There's a couple of really good videos that Mike has put together. I invite you to go on to our website, our YouTube feed, and look for him. He's a great presenter, and he will walk you through setting things up. It's really quite prolific with videos. And that is the end of this. So let me stop sharing. Need to take a sip here of water, and we can open it up for questions.
So thanks a lot, Dan. Anybody on the meeting want to start out with questions?
I put everybody to sleep.
In the room want to ask questions? Okay, the primary question I wanted to ask was about CW, and I think you covered it, so I appreciate that. How about RTTY for a RTTY contest? How does that, how would you handle that?
Oh, it works great, right? It's just, you know, are you talking about FSK RTTY or AFSK?
I wouldn't, when I work RTTY contest, I run N1MM, and that thing that rides on N1NM with the windows and so on. I guess you'd run that on the local computer at the radio and then remote into it, and it would work really smooth, right?
You can do that, or you can use SmartLink. I use exactly that setup when I'm doing RTTY.
Okay.
So I can go over SmartLink, and I don't have any problem at all with RTTY.
Okay, and you described the 2-win key setup for CW. So that would be if you had a paddle at one end, your first win key would turn it into an ASCII character, send it over, then the second win key would turn it into back into CW.
That's correct.
How do you do straight key CW? Me and Bob BHM really want to know. Would that be the Flex Radio Maestro solution with?
You know, I would recommend that there's like the remote rig doesn't do a bad job. I mean, if you're sending straight key, I mean, unless you're using a bug or something, you're probably going to be 25, you know, under 30 words per minute, for sure. So I think it'll work. I think it would work fine. You know, CW is tough. Like you can't do like QSK really well over the internet because everything is delayed. Right. So when you think about bundling up audio at the remote end and shipping it over the internet and then uncompressing it or doing whatever it needs to render it to so you can hear it, there are just delays that you have absolutely no control over. So the very first thing that has to happen is at the radio, if you're using a standard radio, you've got to take it out of the audio, convert it to the digital domain, compress it or not, and then you need to wrap it in Ethernet packets and ship it over the internet, and then those need to get reassembled at the local location, and then the inverse of what took place at the remote station. You got to run them through whatever codec is they're encoded by, uncompress them if you're doing that, and then render them into audio. So there are a number of delays that just occur in that chain that are impossible to get around, right? So if you think about it, if you're using a PC at your local station, the PC has to have, I mean, you're going to be taking cycles from the PC, so it's got to have the headroom to do that. If you're using some Linux or Raspberry Pi device, the same thing applies. So I mean, you can be looking at a second or more of actual delay from when the RF is coming to the station to the time that you hear it, even under really great conditions.
I can see how that might be a problem in a fast pileup or a.
Well, if you're in a pileup or something, yeah, right. That's essentially the problem, right? So now you can you can get it under a second. I mean, but 500 milliseconds is still half a second, right? And if you ping, let's say you ping Google, I mean, I can do it right now. Ping Google, you're probably going to get, I don't know, 20, 30 milliseconds of response time. That is one direction, right? So your audio is going to take at least that long, right? And then you add all of the processing that has to occur. I mean, even in 20, really fast internet, you could be looking at 300 milliseconds, 400 milliseconds of actual lag. So it's just a factor. Doesn't matter much with RTTY, but it would matter if you're doing high speed CW.
Yeah. Come on, guys. Anybody else have questions?
I have a question. Dan, this is actually more of a product question. What is the status on the Maestros?
That's a great question. So what we're telling people now, it won't be until next year. And that's about as far as I can go with it. If you want a more precise answer, you can call our sales line. They will give you a different answer, but my answer is next year.
Okay.
And the primary issue, the primary issue is that the Maestro uses a tablet PC.
Mm-hmm.
and tablet PCs, they're only sold for a certain period of time, and then they get replaced with another model. So, the design that we had used a certain tablet PC, and we couldn't, keep up, right? I mean, we would have to stock 1,000 of these tablet PCs in order to make sure we had enough inventory there so we could build them. And with all of the delays that occurred because of COVID and the other delays, the more political ones, we were looking at, like, we put an order for a tablet PC and it was 12 months, 14 months out, and we can't maintain a product that way. So we made the decision to take a different route. I can't go into too much detail, but we're not using a tablet PC.
Okay. Thank you very much. That sounds like positive news, so appreciate it.
Yep, it is. Yep. It'll make for a better product, by the way. So.
Anybody else?
You can ask me any question about PGXL, TGXL, Antenna Genius, anything Flex Radio. I am I'm pretty deep into those products, so I'm happy to answer your questions.
So what percentage of Flex Radio's business is amateur as opposed to commercial or other niche markets?
That's a question that I would rather have Matt Youngblood make. But it's not a small percentage. I'll put it that way. So the amateur, let me do it in terms of our operational staff has doubled since I've been here. That's I joined in May of 2019. Our operational staff has doubled, and it is all supporting amateur radio.
You still hiring?
We are. We are. In fact, we just added some new salespeople.
Dan, it's N7US. My name is Jim. I've got one question. Do Flex radios have break-in true QSK?
Yes. The pin diode switching on the output of the PAs on the 6000 series products.
Okay, so you can hear between elements.
True QSK.
So you can hear between elements,
Yes.
between dits and dots.
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
And this is Mike, KC7V. I know in the PGXL in the past, there were some issues with the SO2R setup. Has that kind of been worked out? I know it didn't affect every amp, but certainly some friends I know had problems.
Well, as far as I know, there's, and I product manage the PGXL. You're talking about the Power Genius, right? Not the Tuner Genius.
Correct, yes.
Right. Power Genius did not have issues with SO2R. We had issues with third-party products like ICOM and Kenwood working in an SO2R environment, and we have a firmware fix for that is about ready to be released. Is that what you were talking? Is that what you were referring to?
I know there was a third party something involved, and I don't know exactly what.
Right.
It was.
So, like, if you had an ICOM, if you had two ICOM radios and you wanted to use a PGXL, we had trouble in an SO2R mode with that particular configuration.
Okay.
But it's been solid with the Flex product, the Flex radios.
Right. Okay. Perfect.
Need more questions? Come on, guys.
Well, I really appreciate you giving a presentation to us.
You bet.
And especially the fact that you had to jump in and fill in for Mike at the last minute. So I appreciate that, and this is very educational for us.
Okay.
And we're going to take a break here for a few minutes, and then we're going to go through our business meeting. You're, of course, welcome to stay on, but you'll probably find it pretty boring. But again, thanks. And
You bet. Do you guys want to, before I go, do you guys want to see how I operate my station real quickly?
Yes.
Like how I set up, this is set up for FT8 here. Let me share my my screen here. Hold on. And I want to go to let's say 40 meters. There we go. Okay, sharing my screen. I hope you guys have a big screens.
In the room,
So this is how I run FT8 specifically. So just starting on the right, top right, there's a PGXL. There's the Tuner Genius. And next to it is the Antenna Genius selector. Below it is the Flex Radio interface to it, and then to the left, I use a product called Grid Tracker. I think probably people have are familiar with that. Let's see. This is my. I really like the Grid Tracker. Here's my DXCC. I'm not doing too bad. It's tough getting into some of these African but I have I've worked 200 and confirmed 174, so that's not too bad. And then the Grid Tracker also gives me the ability to search for interesting contacts, and then this is the WSJTX one of the modded versions, which I like to use because it has this feature called Bounce that allows me to select, excuse me, select someone in the middle of a QSO, and then pounce on them when they're done with their QSO, and looks like they're done right now. So that's it. I mean,
So-
the other thing that I really like about Grid Tracker is that allows me to interface with all of the logging services. So I have Logbook of the World, QRZ, you name it. I've got a Club Log. I've interfaced with a lot of them because I get questions from time to time. But once I make a contact, it automatically gets logged. I don't have to do any. I don't have to upload any logs or do anything like that unless I'm in a contest.
So what model of radio are you using?
It's a 6600.
You're only using one slice?
In this case, yeah. But I can quickly add another.
Yeah, I wish I had a screenshot ready of, I've got a 6600M and I use one slice on the front panel. And then I run 3 slices of WSJTX at the same time. It works quite well.
Yeah, a lot of people do that, especially if you run a run. You know, I've set it up so I'm running like a ping pong kind of thing. So I'm, transmitting on 15 meters, receiving on 20, then transmitting on 20, receiving on 15. And it works really great in a contest, but it's more mental energy than I want to consume when I sit down and just do casual operating.
I found it's nice for, like, in the summer, I'll leave it set up, one of them set on 6 meters. So that way, if something starts happening.
It is great.
Yeah, I'll hear the alerts, or I won't miss an opening that way.
Well, this little feature right here in, I don't know if you can see what I'm pointing to, this, but it's kind of a band scope feature, lets you know what kind of activity is occurring where, on what bands. And it's more or less accurate. But if I'm doing like a RIDI contest, then I'll use N1MM and I'll have 2 slices open and I'll be doing, full SO2R on that.
With
So-
go ahead.
Go ahead. No, that's what.
With all the applications that you have open and running on your screen, are you using any type of software like Display Fusion to keep everything organized in terms of application placement on your screen?
Well, that's a really good question. Windows just came out with a way to do that. I don't know if I can demo it here. Let's see. I can't demo it, but it will create little zones that you can drop things into. Makes it easier to organize it a little bit. But the applications themselves memorize their location. And really, the operational part of this is 3 apps. It's the Flex Radio app, the Grid Tracker, and then WSJTX. These others are really kind of monitoring what my station has done. This the solar thing is current conditions. It comes from Grid Tracker. So all of these, there's only 3 apps that I'm using.
Okay.
All right. Well, I thought you guys would think that was interesting.
Yeah, that was
Thank you.
interesting.
Thank you so much for allowing me to take up an hour and oh boy, like 1.5 hours of your time. I do appreciate it. The opportunity. Please, I'm Dan at flexradio.com. I love to hear from customers. If you have a question or want follow up on anything, Flex Radio, certainly send me a note, and then I'll provide. Who do I need to send the copy of the presentation to? Is that
Yeah, you've been communicating with Virgil, so it's probably best to
Virgil?
send it straight to him.
Send it him? Okay.
Kilo 7 Victor Zulu.
And then he can send it out to the rest of the group.
Yeah.
I'll get that out to you by tomorrow morning. All right.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, guys. Adios. Enjoy your meeting.
Hey, Dan, are you
Before
gonna
you go,
are you gonna be in
Yep.
Orlando?
I should be, yeah. Yep, for Hamcation, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. I was there last year. So they usually bring me in to talk there.
All right. K7MY is gonna hunt you down.
Okay. Hunt me down no matter where I'm at. All right.
okay, thanks a lot.
See you. Yep. Bye, guys.
Okay, it's about 10 after 8. On the Zoom meeting and in the room, let's take a break till about 8:20, and then we'll pick back up with the business side of the meeting. Okay, it's about 20 after. If you guys on the Zoom meeting are still there and can hear me. Looks like the next item on the agenda is Treasurer's Report, so I'll turn it over to Mike.
Thank you. We are doing better. We've collected several $100s in dues already. The total accounts up to a little over $9,172. We do have some expenses coming up in terms of a GoDaddy website builder renewal that happens annually. And we have about 34, I think, members that have renewed to date. So there's another 85 or 90 out there still. And the next slide on this thing should show the instructions on how to pay your dues. Probably about half have come in via checks and half have come in by PayPal at this point. So I'll put out another email on the Reflector here in a week or so, statusing who's paid, and just as a reminder. And one other reminder, if you do use PayPal, be sure to give me your PayPal email address, because it's not always the same one that's in the club roster.
Okay, and the next slide. Okay, the club running the ongoing DXCC report for the club is up and seems to be working. I entered my stuff, my information. It was pretty seamless. And a few days later, it appeared. So if you go to the next one, so we've got guys in there with, you can hardly read that, like 376 worked and 340 current. And then I'm down there at 132. Why did you guys elect me as the president of a DX club? Yeah. And there's a bunch of names. I chopped it off, but there's geez, close to 100 members on the list. And my CW number is about the same, is exactly the same as my mix number. Next slide. Okay, the banquet. The deadline to buy tickets has passed. Talked to N7HQ, who's the president of Scottsdale and the Scottsdale Radio Club. And he said there were 33 entries a couple days before the deadline, and about half of them were CADXA. So we'll get a chance to meet people from the other clubs and give our own presentations and awards, and presumably they will also. But hopefully there'll be a good number of CADXA members there, so you won't feel too much like strangers. I'm looking forward to the prime rib and the ice cream. And N7ELL himself will be the guest speaker, talking about healthcare electronics. Next one. Nominating committee, BHM, do you want to talk to this? Or N7MWL, do you want to?
Yeah, if you're interested, we have 3 positions open. President, vice president, and secretary. And contact myself or John, N7NWL. And we would sure like to hear from somebody on each one of these positions. If I can find my note here. But anyway, if you're interested at all, call us. We'll give you the details as far as the, how much time it takes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But we sure would like to have some volunteers on the completion of our board. John?
What Bob said.
Okay, I have already volunteered to be the immediate past president, which actually is a board position. And at our last board meeting, Larry, W7R was there as the immediate past president, and he really gave us a lot of insight about a lot of things like the DXer of the Year award and some of the other struggles we're going through as a club. So if you haven't already served the club, contact these guys and sign up for a year or two, because the only way we can keep this club going is if we get people to volunteer to serve on the board. Next slide. Okay. I don't believe either W7R or A7A are on the meeting. At the board meeting, Larry said things are progressing smoothly for Visalia. If either of you've joined since then, since we introduced ourselves earlier, speak up. If not, we'll go to the next slide. Yeah, Virgil says registration is open on the website.
I can talk a little bit about it. Mike KC7V.
Okay.
The things are moving along pretty smoothly. We've got about 172 registered so far. All the programs are in place, including the breakfast dinner. The breakfast meeting will be the 3Y0 Bouvet operation. The dinner Saturday night will be W0GJ, who's well known. We've got some technical talks. We've got some de-expedition talks. So it ought to be good. Things are progressing nicely. Now we're just going to ramp up some marketing after the first of the year. Typically to get, we'd like to get about 500 attendees. So if you haven't been to Visalia, this is the first time since 2019. We'd love to see you there. There'll be a
Great,
DX
thanks.
Academy,
Oh.
a DX Forum, a Contest Academy, a DX University, DX Forum, Contest Forum, YL Forum, a lot of different things.
Yeah, the one time I attended, I did drive. Okay, thanks a lot. Next slide. Okay, the meeting location. This is part of what we talked about at the board meeting. There were 8 people in the room earlier, and 2 of them left early, and there were 14 on Zoom, including our presenter from Austin. We heard some feedback. Some of the guys on the board ended up talking to some other members at random at a ham fest or something, and got some feedback that it seems like it's a East Valley club. And when we were looking for a location, we didn't want to stray too far from Para Club, where we'd been for decades. As long as I've been involved in this club, which is 27 years ago, I moved to Arizona, it's been in the Para Club. We lost that ability to use that site just because of their policies. We had the senior center for a while, which is not far from where we're standing right now. And that became unusable during COVID, and they still haven't returned to decent hours. And the room wasn't that pleasant. So we really got lucky when we found this church, and it's a decent room. We could get 20 or 30 people in here without too much trouble. We've got good internet connectivity. We have access to it, and it's very close to where we've traditionally been meeting, which is the South Scottsdale kind of area. I just noticed a typo on my slide. But anyway, so we looked at the roster, and what we kind of figured out is about a third of the members live in the East Valley, and about a third of the members live in the West Valley. So those are the guys that are complaining about not being able to come here. And about a third of the members are outside of the area entirely, either elsewhere in the state, like Prescott or Tucson or somewhere, or in Illinois or Philippines. But I think he's moving back. But anyway, if anybody has any suggestions to how we could make these meetings more accessible to everybody, bring them up with the board, or bring them up right now while we're all in the meeting. We were just talking about this during the break. There are advantages to the small talk that occurs when you're at a bunch of people in a room that you just can't do on Zoom. You learn stuff. You talk about QRM kind of problems, and somebody else has an answer to it. So that's what really makes the club beneficial, is being able to meet the other people in person regularly. So I'd like to encourage people to try to get together so the club doesn't just become a YouTube video. But anyway, if you've got any ideas, either speak up now or come to a board meeting or serve on the board next year. You about to say something, Virgil? Yeah.
So I'll comment, as far as the programs, you know, we started off with our first in-person meeting was kind of just a round table in March. And then we had Ned and then Marvin we're in-person presenters. And then since then, I've just been following recommendations of, you know, Ron referred somebody, Lee referred somebody, Reinhardt. I think I got the Arduino guy was a Reinhardt referral. And so I was just, you know, hey, we should have this guy as a presenter. And I wasn't necessarily paying attention to whether they were in person or remote. I was just following referrals and getting them on the calendar. So I think one of the things for next year that I'm going to really focus on is making sure hopefully like every other month we have an in-person presenter as well. In January, we're kind of going to do an open topic of kind of roundtable discussion too. So for the January meeting, you know, I encourage everybody to come and be in person as well. But hopefully that helps as far as, you know, having a local presenter instead of everything just up through Zoom as well. But would like to have you guys, everybody attend in person if we can.
Anybody else want to discuss this issue? We are still in the Zoom meeting, right? Okay. Well, again, feel free to bring it up with other board members or serve on the board yourself next year, and we'll continue to look into this. Next slide. Okay, any other club business that we didn't already beat to death that you'd like to bring up from the floor or from the Zoom meeting? Okay, next slide. Okay, NQ7R, are you ready to share your spreadsheets and talk about the club activity?
Yes, I think everything's ready to go. I just have to bring up the, well, let's see here.
And he's going to make you a presenter.
Okay. Not a lot of updates, but
Yeah,
I'm
stand by,
sure.
Tom, stand by a second. Yes. And are you, nothing's happened yet. Did you click on the share screen button yet, Tom?
Well, I did, but
Yeah,
maybe I didn't do it correctly.
something's happening. There we
But
go. Okay, we see it. Go ahead.
anyway, as I was saying, not a lot of not a lot of activity. I think everybody's busy. But these are the latest numbers I have for the DX challenge. As you can see, Steve K7SP is outdoing everybody with his 50 watts. And otherwise, we have some pretty good numbers, I think. I'd like to see more people maybe enter some data, but we'll take what we've got. I'm going to jump this double triple play. Not a lot of people active on that. Jim, Rainey, and myself do most of the triple play, closing in on getting most of them. Although I don't think 5 Tango 5 is active on CW or sideband. Let's see, for the marathon, again, we have some, I think, some very good numbers. And I've got to check to see, I believe there's I believe there can be a club entry. And I got to check and see how that works if people are interested. But again, got some pretty good numbers here. As far as the expeditions, I forgot to put this in my this TL8AAZZ. I forgot to put that on the spreadsheet I sent out, but we can get it all collected and put together for January. I hope to be in person in January. 6 meters. I guess that's going to change. I think sounds like 6 meters starting to come open here now. For the digital roundup, again, Jim Shriney and I are much the only two people that are doing much activity. And Jim has really been more active than I have. And the last thing is the alphabet soup. Steve completed his cutter. So we've got 4 people that did all the way, made it all the way through the alphabet. As I've said before, I'll take data anytime, but of course I think we're done with the expeditions for the year, unless something comes up really nice. I guess that's about it from here. Back to you. And let's see, stop share. There we go.
Okay, thanks a lot. And I think that should bring us to the end of the meeting. If I stand here, you guys can look at me. So thanks everybody for showing up either on Zoom or in person. And a week from tomorrow is our banquet. So hopefully those of you who are listening to me also signed up for the banquet, and I'll see you then. So thanks a lot. And I'm going to hit the gavel and close the meeting.